The warm water ran over my hands, the steady stream filling the sink as I scrubbed the last few plates. The quiet hum of the kitchen surrounded me, the only sounds being the occasional clink of dishes and the faint murmur of the television playing in the other room. The house felt still, peaceful in a way it rarely did, until I heard footsteps behind me. I didn't turn around right away. I could feel his presence before I saw him, close, steady, lingering. The shift in the air sent a faint ripple down my spine, something unspoken stretching between us, just beneath the surface. "You're always cleaning up," he murmured, his voice low, smooth, carrying an edge of quiet amusement. I exhaled a quiet laugh, shaking my head. "Someone has to." "Doesn't seem fair," he mused, leaning against the counter beside me. "You cook and clean? It's called being efficient." His smirk deepened. "Or maybe you just like keeping your hands busy." The words sent a slow ripple through me, curling low in my stomach. I swallowed, focusing on the plate in my hands, my fingers tightening slightly around the sponge. "Is that supposed to mean something?" I asked, my voice quieter now. A pause. Then, "I don't know. You tell me." I finally glanced at him, just for a second. His gaze was steady, unreadable, but there was something beneath it, something waiting. Testing. The kitchen suddenly felt warmer, the soft glow of the overhead lights casting sharp shadows across the countertops. I turned back to the sink, rinsing off the last plate and setting it on the drying rack. "If you came in here to help, there's an extra towel." He chuckled, low and easy. "And if I didn't?" My pulse ticked up. "Then I guess you're just keeping me company." I can think of worse ways to spend an evening. I exhaled, reaching for a dish towel, wiping my hands dry as I turned toward him fully. He was still watching me, leaning against the counter, arms crossed loosely over his chest. The weight of his gaze pressed against my skin, steady, expectant. "You always do that?" I asked, tilting my head slightly. His brow lifted. "Do what?" "Watch me like that." His smirk twitched, barely there. "Maybe I just like the view." Something in my stomach tightened. The kitchen, the dishes, the warmth of the room, it all felt distant now, secondary to whatever was happening here, between us. I should have stepped away. Should have ended the conversation before it became something else. But instead I stayed, and I let the moment linger. The silence between us stretched, thick and heavy, carrying a weight I wasn't sure I wanted to name. I could still feel the warmth of the water against my skin, but it was nothing compared to the warmth radiating from him, from the steady way he watched me, from the quiet way he just waited. I shifted, my fingers still curled around the dish towel, twisting the fabric slightly between my hands. "You always this talkative?" He exhaled a quiet laugh, shaking his head. "Not always. Just when it counts." "And this counts?" His smirk deepened. "You tell me." The air pulsed between us, a subtle but undeniable shift, like stepping too close to the edge of something dangerous, but not quite being able to pull away. The sound of the faucet dripping filled the silence, the faint scent of soap and warm water clinging to the air. It was just a kitchen, just a conversation, just a moment. And yet it wasn't. He stepped closer, not much, just enough to tilt the balance between us. Just enough to make my breath hitch before I caught myself, before I steadied the emotions rising in my chest. "You should probably go back to the living room," I murmured, keeping my voice even. His brow lifted slightly, his amusement never wavering. "Do you want me to?" I hesitated, just long enough for him to notice. Just long enough for me to notice. His smirk softened into something else, something quieter, something I wasn't ready to name. "Didn't think so." I swallowed hard, the dish towel twisting tighter between my fingers. The weight of the moment pressed into me, wrapping around me like something tangible, something inescapable. I could end this now. I should end this now. But instead I waited. The moment stretched, expanding in the quiet hum of the kitchen. The weight of his presence felt heavier now, pressing against the air between us, settling somewhere deep in my chest. I could hear my own heartbeat, steady but uncomfortably loud, matching the slow rhythm of the dripping faucet. He hadn't moved. Neither had I. And that was the problem. "You should probably go back to the living room," I murmured, my voice quieter now, but no less firm. His gaze flickered, a slow inhale as he watched me, as if weighing his next move. Do you really want me to? I swallowed, my fingers still curled around the dish towel, the soft fabric damp beneath my touch. That's not the point. He exhaled a quiet laugh, the kind that sent a slow ripple through me, curling low in my stomach. Then what is? The question sat heavy between us, charged with something neither of us wanted to name. The scent of dish soap clung to my skin, the lingering warmth of the water fading against my fingertips, but none of it mattered. Not when the real heat in the room came from something else entirely. Something unspoken. Something dangerous. This, I finally admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Whatever this is. His smirk softened, just slightly, something deeper flashing in his eyes. Funny. I think we both know exactly what this is. I let out a slow breath, my throat tight, my pulse steady but fast. And what if I don't? His head tilted, the dim kitchen light casting shadows along his jawline. Then I guess I'll have to make sure you figure it out. The way he said it sent a slow, creeping heat through me, settling beneath my skin, tightening in my chest. He wasn't just teasing anymore. He was waiting. Watching for the moment I'd either pull away or step closer. And I wasn't sure which one I wanted more. His fingers twitched against the counter, close but not touching, as if testing the distance, as if giving me space to make the choice. You always so careful? I swallowed hard, my breath catching in my throat. Not always. Good. The word was barely there, a breath, a whisper, but it was enough. Enough to make the space between us feel impossibly thin. Enough to make my pulse jump, my stomach tighten, my breath slow. Enough to make me realize that no matter how much I told myself I should pull away, I wasn't going to. And neither was he. The moment stretched again, longer this time, heavier. The sound of the faucet dripping, the faint hum of the refrigerator, the distant murmur of the television, it all faded into the background, lost in the quiet thrum of tension curling around us. You don't have to say anything, he murmured, his voice lower now, more certain. I already know. I inhaled sharply, my fingers tightening against the counter. Know what? His gaze dropped briefly to my lips before meeting my eyes again. That you don't want me to go. The words sent another slow shiver through me, unsteady, undeniable. I should have denied it, should have laughed, should have said something to push the moment away before it became something neither of us could undo. But I didn't. I couldn't. Because he was right. And we both knew it. He shifted then, just slightly, his fingers grazing mine where they rested on the counter, the touch light but deliberate. The warmth of his skin seeped into mine, the contact sending a ripple of something sharp and hot up my spine. I exhaled, slow, steady, but it didn't help. Nothing did. Not when the air between us was thick with something unspoken, something inevitable. His fingers flexed, just barely, his thumb brushing against the inside of my wrist, tracing a slow, feather-light line that made my breath catch in my throat. I should have pulled away, but instead I let it linger. I let the moment unravel, let the silence stretch, let the weight of everything unsaid settle between us like a thread pulled too tight. You're not stopping me, he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper now. I swallowed, my breath shallow. Should I? A pause. Then, no. The words sent another sharp pulse through me, something I couldn't name, something I wasn't ready to name. But it didn't matter, because the moment had already shifted, tilted, fallen, and there was no going back now,